Good afternoon. I'd like to call this meeting to order of the Design Review Board for Thursday, October 5th, 2023. I'll call roll.
Well, first we're going to have Margie confirm for you that the Open Meeting Act has been met. So.
Yes, I can confirm that the packet was posted and the required notice was provided.
Thank you.
So I'm going to proceed to call roll for the board's benefit. We have 4 appointed members, and so our new member is John Nelson. This is his first meeting, so I'm going to call him first. Board Member Nelson. Here. Board Member Doak.
Here.
Board Member Romy. Board Member Manley.
Present.
Okay, so we have 2 in person and 1 via Zoom. That is 3 members present. That constitutes a quorum, so we can conduct today's business by going to item 2.1.
Okay. Are there any changes or recommendations that need to be made for the minutes from August 24th? Hearing none, I will ask for a motion.
I move we approve the minutes.
And do I have a second? Thank you. All right, moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. We will move on to new business, item 3.1.
Thank you, Mr. Manley. We have 2 public hearing items for you to review today. The first one is a new application. It's filed by Katie Kitchen on behalf of 1858 Properties, LLC. And the request is for a certificate of compatibility to allow the demolition of an existing single-family dwelling that's located within the Business Improvement District Number 1. And the location is the northeast corner of Mulberry and South 4th Street. And the property is addressed at 305 East Mulberry Street. Historically, we've also found it to be addressed as 257 South 4th Street. This is a existing dwelling that our records indicate was built in approximately 2014, and there was a house next to it to the north that our records show was built in 1928. This is a wood-framed 1-story structure. Has a footprint of about 1,286 square feet, and based on the county appraiser's record, the dwelling structure is valued at $35,760. This is a corner lot. It's not overly wide. It's 56 feet wide by 150 feet deep, and it's part of a much larger plot of land that's owned by 1858 Properties on the north side of Mulberry between 3rd and 4th Street. And from the parcel that we were able to identify on our property mapping, there's only one other dwelling on this property, and that's the one directly to the north. Neither of these structures are designated as historically significant, nor are they located within any historic district. As far as their zoning, they're not part of the central business district, but are zoned residential. And so this property is at the south end of a block that's mostly vacant. The application submitted by the applicant states that this structure is no longer habitable and is in need of demolition. And there are not any plans that were submitted for replacement construction at this time. So you are evaluating this just on the demolition proposal and not any sort of redevelopment proposal. But page 2, we've extracted from the guidelines that say you should only consider demolition of a downtown district building if it does not contribute to the historical or architectural character of the district, or it detracts from and does not have the potential to contribute to the importance of the district. And in doing so, you can evaluate any plans for site restoration or new construction as part of that review. This has not been declared a dangerous structure or unsafe structure by the building official, but we have provided you with some photos, and the applicant has provided supporting information that shows that this structure is no longer habitable, and it's not so bad from the outside, but the inside shows quite a bit of disrepair, a lot of rubbish and debris that is accumulated on the inside of the structure. And so we have pretty good documentation for the inside. If there is any additional detail that the applicant could provide about exterior conditions or any structural deterioration of this dwelling, I think that would be helpful to the board. This is at the very edge of the downtown business improvement district. It has some features that are still intact, but because it's so isolated on this block, it doesn't really contribute significantly to the character of downtown Salina or the surrounding neighborhood. And so the applicant's view is that this structure is obsolete. It doesn't fit with their future vision for the property, and they think removal is the only feasible option. As I said, there's no plans submitted for reconstruction, but the plan is to restore this to a grassy condition like the remainder of the tract to the north. One question we did have is that if this is removed, it leaves one remaining dwelling at 253 South 4th, and so staff would request that the applicant provide any information they have about their plans for that property. And so what we've indicated is that all of the 1858 properties, land holdings, are zoned residential. And so if there is a future plan for redevelopment, because this is in the business improvement district, those redevelopment plans would be submitted to this board for review. So on page 3, we've given you a set of findings for you to consider adopting. And the first one is that the applicant has shown that the condition of this structure is deteriorated to a point that it's not really feasible to rehabilitate and reuse. It really only occupies a small portion of a 1.5 acre site that's being proposed for future redevelopment. And this is at the edge of the downtown business improvement district. We had to check the map twice to confirm that it was in fact in the district. It's at the very edge, and so it's not a significant property for the historical character of the district. So your options would be to approve the certificate of compatibility for demolition. You could approve the proposed demolition based on staff suggested findings, subject to any conditions. You could postpone consideration to a future meeting if you don't think you have enough information to act today, or you could deny 1858 Properties application. So if the applicant provides additional information about the exterior and any structural issues with the property to your satisfaction, we would recommend alternative 2, that the board authorize the demolition subject to the condition that the site be graded to a mowable, maintainable condition and be seeded or landscaped in a manner compatible with the adjoining buildings and landscape. So with that, staff would be open to any questions. We can go back to any slides or pictures that you'd like to look at again. But our two primary questions for the applicant are there structural or exterior issues with this dwelling, as well as the interior issues? And the other question just is, we're curious about the one remaining house and what plans there are for that. So with that, staff would be open to your questions.
Are there any questions of staff from the board?
I do have a question for staff, and this is just to your point about the house next door to what's going to happen. Do we know if the sewer line is connected for both houses? Does it go out to Mulberry, or is it individual lines going out to 4th Street? The reason I ask that because it happened in the past where we demoed one house and then they were a common sewer line and had to go back and redo that just to
Well, I think that's a good question for the applicant to see how much homework they've done. So.
Okay. Ready for me?
Yep.
Okay. Katie Kitchen, I represent 1858 Properties. To answer that question directly, I don't know specifically on the sewer line, but our plan for the house next door, the 253 South 4th, is not to remain at that location anyway. The reason it's still exists there is because we don't have a plan of where it will go, but we would like to move it because unlike the house that we're applying for now, it has all of its original historical features. It's a beautifully built home that we would like to preserve. So we just haven't identified where that will move at this time.
Okay.
On that. So but I don't have an answer for the sewer. And then I can.
So it is vacant then?
It is
Both-
vacant.
okay.
Yes, it is vacant currently. And it's been weatherized and all the things so that we can pick it up and move it
Okay.
when that time comes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I can answer some of the other questions that staff raised as well. On the exterior conditions, as Mr. Andrew said, from the outside, it doesn't look terrible, but there is some cracking on the foundation that we would have to spend a lot of time and expense to decide if it's even salvageable. It also, the chimney is falling down, and that would have to be rebuilt. The porch is sagging and being held up by cinder blocks at this time as well, just as from an exterior standpoint. The interior, as the picture showed, is there is literally not anything historical left on the interior of the house. Woodwork has been removed, cabinetry, the wood floors are not in a condition that can be refinished, and there's even knob and tube electrical wire that I came across as I was in photographing. So it's in really bad condition. And then the only other question that I identified in the packet was what are our plans originally. In some of the original plans as the downtown development happened was multi-family housing at that location, and that is still one of the things that we have on our list as possibilities. We're also exploring a couple other options within that. Anything that we do there would be complementary to the downtown, the hotel, because obviously we have a vested interest in its success, and the neighborhood. But at this time, we don't have specific identifiable plans. But part of that is because we still had a piece that we just acquired this home this summer. So some of that was because we didn't have it all yet. So.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, it looks like, in answer to the sewer question, that the homes are served from the rear alley. And you can't judge because it doesn't show the connections, but usually when there's an alley like that, it would be fairly unusual. Most of the homes have just an individual service connection to the alley, and so this doesn't look like a good candidate for a shared sewer situation. So I believe it's likely that each of those homes has their own sewer connection back to the alley.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions?
No.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right, bring it back to the board. Any other questions or comments? Any comments from interested citizens? All right, I will entertain a motion.
I move we approve with option 2 Approve the proposed demo of the structure at 305 East Mulberry Street based upon staff suggested findings and any conditions they identify.
Second.
Would you like to add the staff recommendation of the site shall be graded to a mobile, maintainable condition, shall be seeded and landscaped in a manner compatible with the adjoining buildings and landscape?
Yeah, that's what I was.
That was
part of
his
option
motion
two.
for alternative 2. So,
Gotcha. Okay.
and that was seconded by Board Member Dope.
All right, well, motioned and seconded. I will take a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you. All right.
Oh. She escaped with that sign. She ran.
Moving to
That's all right.
item 3.2.
Item 3.2 is not a new item. It's a revisit of a application that was previously reviewed and approved by the board. And so it's not purely an action item, but this was a case where we had an application come before the board in 2022, and it planned to make some fairly substantial exterior modifications to the Art Center building, and there was a condition that the board has that if there are any significant changes to the project as proposed, that it would be brought back to the board. And so we're bringing this back partially for information purposes and just to allow the board to have any questions or concerns. And so the two main conditions that the board had in December 2022 was that there was talk about the existing nameplate on the front facade facing Santa Fe being retained but relocated as part of the project. And then if there are any significant changes to the plans presented to and approved by the board, these will be presented to staff, which they have been, to determine whether any additional review by the board is required. So we're bringing this back for additional review, and I think Mr. Hers is going to give you an overview of the changes. The end result is that the building's not going to change much, but there are a lot of changes from what was presented to you in December of 2022. So I'll let Destin summarize some of those things.
Thank you, Dean. So in your packet, you will see elevation drawings that the project architect furnished for the submittal. It does show what is being planned in terms of what's being retained for the building and what's being changed. So you'll see that while the original December 8th, 2022 application had quite a few changes, as Mr. Andrews said, they've really scaled back due to financial budgeting concerns and increased construction costs, and I'll walk through what some of the changes are. I'll start with the west side because there's very few things that are changing on the west side. Almost the entire west side of the building project has been eliminated. There is a new sign that is being proposed for the Salina Art Center that would be above the north window of the west side of the building. There's also some new letters that are associated with that sign that would be part of the project. The existing columns are going to remain, the windows are going to remain, and the accent stone sign, which is above the entry door on the west side, would also remain, along with the steel columns that are kind of the architectural trademark of the building. So for the most part, when you look at the west side, the only thing that's really changing is the signage above the window and some of the artwork on the door, the signage on the door, the decals. On the east side, there are a few more changes, but still not nearly as many as were originally proposed. A lot of it deals with lighting. So you'll see that there's accent lights being added above the arched alcoves on the east side, as well as on the columns. There's also new wall infill that's being proposed where the door was, and so they do still plan on infilling the wall, adding accent lighting to that, with the potential of having messages or signage on that exterior wall frontage. The door was originally proposed to be relocated with a new system, and we do have a new storefront system, but the location appears to be in the same location that it has been and is existing. And there was a concrete bench of sorts, a shelf that was going to be constructed along the frontage with the Salina Art Center sign mounted and constructed on top of it. That part of the project has been eliminated, and there still will be a new art sign and letters, but it won't be mounted on that concrete shelf that you originally reviewed in December. And so there were two conditions of approval in the December 8, 2022 meeting. One was that the existing nameplate on the front Santa Fe Avenue facade be retained but relocated. Now it's being retained and will not need to be relocated. And the second is if there are any significant changes to the plans or exterior materials presented to and approved by the Design Review Board, these will be presented to the board's administrative staff to determine whether any additional review of the board is required, which is why we're here today. So when staff looked through the proposed changes, there does not appear to be any changes that are out of character with the plans that the DRB originally approved in 2022. And therefore, most of the same findings of fact that were applied with the original case would still apply with these revised drawings. So we do have 16 findings that staff has listed, starting on the bottom of page 5 and going through page 6. And staff has identified the following options for your consideration. Option 1 would be to approve the amended Salina Art Center design plans upon finding that the proposed exterior renovations to the building Santa Fe Avenue and the alley facades will conform to the design guidelines for downtown Salina. Option 2 is to approve the application subject to any conditions approved by majority of the DRB members. Option 3 is postpone consideration if you feel additional information is needed. And number 4 is deny the application as presented, making findings and the reasons thereof. In this case, staff would recommend option 2, which is to approve the application subject to 2 conditions, and they're very similar to the conditions that were approved by the board in December of 22. And so the first one is the existing nameplate on the front, which is Santa Fe Avenue facade, that it be retained. And the second is that if there's any significant changes made to the exterior of the building, that the applicant would get with staff and we would determine if additional review by the board is needed. With that, staff will take any questions that you might have. We do have a representative for the Art Center project here, Mr. Ross, so he can speak to any questions you have about the project as it's being proposed, and if there's any graphics you would like to see, we can look at those as well.
Sure. I'm Bob Ross with Hutton Corporation, representing the Art Center. We're serving as the construction manager on the project. I think Dustin did a pretty good job of explaining the changes that are taking place with the design, with the facade. It's probably easier to say what is changing from what's existing than what changed from the original design, because by and large it's going to be very much what it is now. As Dustin said, on the rear of the building, basically the only change is really the signage that's being added, and on the front of the building, probably the most significant change is we're basically just removing the south entrance and infilling that with similar wall construction to the existing adjacent finishes, and then the art sign is still going in similar to the original design, other than it's not going to be mounted on a concrete bench structures. It's going to be a concrete pedestal or base nearer to the ground. So, other than that, I don't know if you have any questions.
I don't have any questions.
Okay.
I think it's pretty straightforward.
Mine was in relation to that concrete pedestal, because I recall when we originally talked about this in December, that concrete bench was a kind of a key aspect of the sign because it was 3D sticking out a little bit.
Right.
So I think that's what justified when you were walking down the sidewalk and you wouldn't run into it because there was a bench that kind of pushed you out. So how tall is this pedestal?
The pedestal, I think the plan calls for maybe 6 inches above the pavement surface. The front of the sign, I believe, is going to be fairly flush with the front of that pedestal, and it doesn't extend out further than the property line. I think actually the depth of the sign, the base, and the letters actually became a little shallower than the original design because we're not removing the existing storefront. Previously, we were going to remove the wainscot wall and all the storefront and put all new storefront in. That would be set back into the building a few inches. Now that we're not doing that, we had to make the base and the letters a little shallower so that they would still fit between the existing front of the building and the property line. So they are a little shallower. I think they might have been 14 or 16 inches, and I think they're 10 inches now. Otherwise, I believe that the overall height of the letters for the art sign are the same.
I think one of the things we didn't know in December that we learned afterwards was we had some concerns about the concrete bench as well, but the architect provided us with a survey of the property, and it actually turned out that the bench did not encroach into the public sidewalk or public right-of-way because the building is actually set back a little off the property line, and so even though it could be viewed as an obstruction, we actually determined that the bench could be built entirely on the Art Center's property and not out in the public space. And so that alleviated some concern about that in terms of extending into the public sidewalk. So there's actually a little bit of a recess to the front of the building there.
Right.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
All right, any other comments by interested citizens? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion.
I move we approve with option number 2 with staff's 2 additional conditions as noted in the recommendation.
Second.
Motion is moved and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Hearing none, item 3.2 passes. Moving on to administrative items, 3.3, annual business meeting, election of officers.
Well, ideally, we would have a little larger or broader membership than we currently have. This is a 7-member board, and we currently are at 4 appointed members, and we have 2 carryover members, Andrew Manley and Kevin Romey, and we have 2 new appointees in 2023, Mr. Doak, who's joining via Zoom, and Mr. Nelson, who's here in person. We still have 2 or the 3 openings, and we have been in contact with SDI, soliciting expressions of interest for those openings. But for this board to function, it does have to have officers, and so the ordinance states that the board chair and vice chair shall be elected to serve for a term of 1 year or until their successors are elected. No person shall be eligible to hold that position for more than 2 full consecutive 1-year terms. So this board has lost its chair and vice chair as of August 31st of this year. And so we have 4 members. Any of those 4 members would be eligible to be elected for the office of chair. And we have 4 members who would be eligible for the office of vice chair. And so what we would do is we would accept nominations from the floor for the position of chair, and then see if that nomination is seconded, and if the nominee is willing to serve, and then we would vote on that, and then we would repeat that for the position of vice chair. So I'm going to open the floor at this time for board members to nominate someone to serve as chair for the upcoming year. And so with that, I'll see if anyone wants to make a nomination.
I'll nominate Mr. Manley.
Okay, we have a motion to nominate Mr. Manley. Do we have a second?
Second.
So we have a motion and a second. If elected, is Mr. Manley willing to serve?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to elect Andrew Manley as chair for the coming year. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
That motion carries, and we have a chair. I'll now open the floor for nomination for the position of vice chair. The vice chair essentially runs the meeting should the chair be absent. And so as long as Mr. Manley has good attendance, they have nothing to worry about. But I would open the floor for nominations for the position of vice chair.
I don't know Mr. Room, but I would nominate him if that.
You said, was that a
Second.
That was a nomination, yes, for
Okay.
Mr. Room.
We have a nomination and a second for Mr. Romey to serve as vice chair for the coming year. All those in favor say aye.
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 So you need not be present to win. So that takes care of our elections. So we have members appointed, and we have officers. And so we don't have any preliminary discussion items for you, but under other business, I would just note that this was a special meeting held in lieu of the September 28th meeting, and so the next regular scheduled meeting would be next week, the 12th, and we do not have any agenda items for that, so that meeting will be canceled. But we do have 2 applications filed for October 26th, which is the 4th Thursday of October, and a regular meeting date. So we will meet again on the 26th, and on that agenda we have a proposal for some awnings to be installed at the building where the Red Fern bookstore is, and then there is a proposal to renovate the building on the north side of Strand Plaza at 114, 116, 118 to be the new home for Prairie Land Market. And so we'll have the plans for that at the October 26th meeting. So unless staff has anything else to bring up or you have questions of us, I think that's the only other business we have to inform you.
Okay. Anything else from the board?
Nope.
All right. I will take a motion for adjournment.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.